Who wants to?
All right, I'm here this evening with a couple of different creators and other people involved in the comic industry, and I just wanted to kind of talk to them and get their feelings on the current, situation that the industry has itself. If you want to introduce yourself, I don't know. I don't know if you guys are seeing the same way I am, but go at it.
All right, maybe I'll go first, since maybe from my perspective I'm on top. So
yeah, you are on top. Yeah.
I'm Ron Marz. I'm a writer and editor in the comics business, and I've been doing this for 30 years. So we were just discussing off camera. This isn't a whole lot different for me. This is, I work at home and don't leave the house anyway. So I just said that I didn't realize it, but I was apparently quarantined for the last 30 years as it was. So it's not an adjustment in my work style, but certainly it's an adjustment in how the business is conducting itself, and how we're getting new product or not getting new product in the stores.
All right, Jim.
Want me to go next? My name is John Belskis. I own Excellent Adventures Comics in Boston Spa. I've been in the business for over 30 years. I also run the Albany Comic Con. This is a big effect for retail stores. Diamond has since shut down production, and that really has stopped the weekly flow of books. And pretty much, if you're a new comic business reliant on those books, you're out of business. So it's been a big hit to comic shops. I think it's going to be a big hit for a while too, because I don't think that this is coming back anytime soon. I think if we see comics by June, that might be the earliest. Generally speaking, for my business, I don't do a ton of new stuff, so we're still doing some back issue sales and some mail order, and kind of keeping the ship afloat till we see what happens.
All right, I'll go next. I'm Jim Whiting. I'm a creator, publisher. I've been working also 30 years in the industry, so that it's all of us. We have 90 years between us here. So the way it's affected me is obviously I had books in the can for coming up that were going to be announced in the new previews. The new previews was canceled, so those books are on hold. I don't know where they're standing. Fortunately, I didn't have any books that were printing, so that in that respect was good, but everything's kind of on hold. What I'm doing, focusing now, is on digital, because I've noticed there's an uptake on digital sales on my website and one of the publishers I work with. So I'm focusing all of my attention now on getting out digital content, and still doing some mail orders, but not as much. But the digital stuff seems to be really picking up. Running a Kickstarter now, which seems to be doing okay. I noticed that the sales on Kickstarter really haven't seemed to suffer much. So focusing basically on that digital market. So we'll see what happens afterwards when the distributors start up. I have a feeling that this is going to do a big bump in the digital market after things do settle down. So I think that's going to reflect how the industry is going to change for me.
All right, first I'll go to John. How do you think this is? I know that we were supposed to have the Albany comic and toy show in April, and you bumped that back to June. I mean, how was that a scheduling fiasco for you with the people you had coming?
Yeah, I mean it's never easy because there's so many wheels in motion, and so contacting the guests were all great about it. We'll lose some and gain some, so it's a matter of scheduling conflicts there. But that's the easier part. The harder part is the vendors, because the vendors have money on the line. So I was thankful there weren't too many vendors that complained too much. And we were able to kind of push fees forward to the June 7th show for everybody that prepaid. But again, I'm not even confident that we'll be able to do it in June, depending on, when the governor allows events more than 500 people to happen again. So we're kind of in a big question mark here. You know, I'll have to make a decision sometime first or second week of May whether we can do June, and then we may have to push it back again. You know, I have a date scheduled for November. We could push it to November, but I'd really like to get one in before that. So it's a matter of working with the hotel and trying to find a date, and then trying to go through the whole, you know, roundabout again, trying to find guests and, you know, making sure the vendors are okay with the dates that we do, the date that we pick. So it really is. I mean, it's tough. It's going to be hard. I think. I mean, mine are small problems compared to some. I mean, I can't even imagine what like New York Comic Con and San Diego and places like that, what they're trying to deal with. And those are, I mean, those are city economies at risk there. So, I mean, you know, San Diego is, I can't even imagine how many millions of dollars that's going to cost the city. So those are, I mean,
well, you look at
it's
think that they're
worldwide, so I don't think it's going to change anytime soon.
well. You also have the, you know, I don't know if this, you know, this may just be me, but you know, they're using the Javits Center as, you know, the you know, a hospital overflow, and you know, I look on the one morning that Cuomo did his news conference there. It's like that's Artist Alley.
Yeah,
right there.
That's where I have stood. You know, that's a very sobering image. You know, having been in the midst of that convention center when there's, you know, whatever it is, 120,000 people or something in the area, to be, you know, to see that place now turned into 3,000 beds, or the XL Center in London where I've done a few shows, that was turned into a hospital. It's, I think that more than anything else, those two images really kind of smacked me in the head with this thing, is that, you know, this is the world's not going to be the same place after this is over with. I think it's going to change how people, I think it's going to change how people interact, and it's going to change how we think of what normal everyday life is. You know, I was saying earlier that I think the thing I miss the most is just being able to go to the gym and work out for an hour, or, you know, go to the gym, work out for an hour, and then stop for a beer at the brewery that's a half a mile from the gym. Those are the little things that I think I really miss. I watched a movie the other night, and there was a scene in a diner, and man, I was really pretty wistful for that diner scene. I was like, oh man, sure, we could actually leave the house and go to a diner whenever you felt like it. That was pretty cool.
And then you realize they're not social distancing.
Yeah, man, there's two people sitting at a diner table right across from each other. It's madness.
Have they officially canceled San Diego? They were supposed to, I had heard.
I don't believe it's official, but I think my gut is that they probably made the decision and just haven't announced it yet, because I don't think with the distancing measures that are in place in California, I just don't think there's any way that it can take place. I mean, that's
right.
That's like a city springing up overnight in that space. It's just an immense crush of people. You know, I obviously, like John said, there's a vast difference between Albany Comic Con, which is, you know, a very well attended, really excellent one-day Comic Con, and 150,000 people in downtown San Diego packed into, you know, a square mile or however much it is. It's just, you know, the scale that you're talking is just nuts. And, you know, I've had any number of shows, including John's, you know, canceled out from under me, or at this point postponed to September, to December. You know, everything's moving back 4 to 6 months when the convention organizers can get space in a venue. And obviously they're just kind of fingers crossed, hoping that it can go off at the new date. And I think the toughest thing is nobody knows. Like, nobody knows when anything is going to, when we're going to be able to do any of this. Even when, you know, when stores start to open and restaurants start to open, and little by little we can sort of get back to normal. I think gatherings, going to concerts, going to movies, something like that, where you have a lot of people in a confined space, that stuff is probably going to be the last on the list that actually takes place.
Yeah, for me, it was kind of I'm trying to use gauges, and trying to okay, gauge, are the kids going to go back to school is a big gauge for me, because if high schools start to operate again and schools start to operate again, you start to go, okay, well, there's a couple of, Shaker High School has 1,500 kids at it. So that's a gauge that, okay, things are starting to open up again. Maybe a show with 500 to 1,000 people is something you can do. But you really can't. I mean, you can't, because you have no idea how long this is going to last. And I understand that they're trying to do the country in quarters and trying to get the governors to all work together. But I mean, that just sounds like it's going to take even longer. I mean, and it's the right thing to do, but I just think, every decision that I hear that's made seems like it's just going to lengthen this thing a little bit longer. And it's scary. I mean, it really is. When you think about okay, my store's not going to be open till June or July.
Yeah, well, the measures that are in place are obviously working. I mean, I watch Cuomo's press conferences every day, and you can see the plateau. You can see that little by little things are getting better, because I think the hospitalizations and the deaths, unfortunately, all of that is reflective of what we did 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I think when we loosen this stuff up, you're going to see the effects of that in 2 or 3 weeks. And if we do it too soon, it's going to, the results are not going to be good. The results are going to be, oh shit, we did this too soon. And then once that genie's out of the bottle, it takes another 2 or 3 weeks to get it back in.
Yeah.
And I'm not the biggest fan of Cuomo, but I think he's handling this great. I mean, he's not trying to rush people back. He's saying we got to be smart about this.
Yeah, it's there's a real sense of leadership, and of there's a hand at the tiller, who's on top of this, who has some forethought into how this is all going to work. And obviously it's not just Cuomo, it's entire team on the state level of people that know what they're doing and are doing the best that they can under these circumstances. It's a comfort. I talk to friends that are in states in the Midwest or in the South or something like that, where it's still a free for all. There's not even a stay at home suggestion in some places. And it's just man, those guys are going to be so screwed in 3 weeks, because they're not taking the precautions now. It's going to explode in 3 weeks, and then they're going to go, oh, where did this come from?
Right. Yeah.
I've yelled at my mom in West Virginia.
Wow.
And she's in the at-risk category.
Well,
so, Jim, how do you think you do a lot of conventions? I mean, how is this going to, affect how you kind of, supplement what you do?
Well, it's funny because I put out 4 books last year, and I ordered extra stock just for conventions. I was already, I ordered stickers and buttons, and I had everything all lined up to do all these shows. And I'm just watching the shows. I got a feeling it's going to be a really busy fall if things open up with show after show after show. We'll see how that goes. But I'm still hoping that by October, Baltimore, I haven't contacted them yet. I don't know what their plans are. But, obviously whenever John shows up, but it looks like everything's getting pushed back into the same time period. I don't know that everybody's going to be able to do it, but it's like the fall could be a pretty busy con season if things are really open.
Yeah.
Also, I was supposed to go to England in July. I'm not even sure I'll be able to do that. So,
England for a show or England for England?
I was going to go visit some creators. I was going over for a wedding, and there's a couple of stores that I deal with over there. So it's kind of both mixed pleasure, fun.
Well, think when it does open up, I think it's going to, everybody's just going to be like, oh my, thank God, and be out there spending money, assuming there's money to be spent, and trying to get back to, I think, retail therapy is a real thing. I think people are going to be, or want to be in stores and in bars and in restaurants and trying to recapture what passes for normalcy. So I think, like I said, a lot of my shows have been pushed back to the second half of the year. So if this hopefully passes as quickly as we're hoping, I'm going to be on a lot of planes the second half of the year, which is
laying a good supply of masks.
Yeah. It's so it's going to be an interesting thing to see, just how this all shakes out, both in terms of the convention end of it and the retail end of it. I think there are going to be stores that maybe the doors don't open back up, because they're so dependent on the new books that if they can't get them from Diamond, they might not be able to weather the storm, which is really scary as overall for the industry.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
That's a nice segue to my next question.
Oh, go ahead.
So, just everybody, whoever wants to, hey, I'll start with John. How do you think that the Marvel and DC handled, the announcement from Diamond? Do you think that, they're going to come up with, I've heard rumors that DC is planning on self-distributing. Thoughts on that as a comic book shop owner?
Well, I mean, I'm no fan of Diamond, but I have to tell you, if Diamond goes away, it's going to be major problems for the industry. I don't think that there's anybody that can step in or is going to want to step in. And if small shops like mine have to order from 4 or 5 or 8 or 10 different publishers to try to maintain, and depending on what those terms are for those shops, I don't see many shops wanting to do that. And I don't think that they're able to do it. So that's going to be a big problem. I think Diamond. The one thing I have respect for Steve Geppi, and I think he's a serious comic guy. He's a comic guy from way back. I don't think he's going to release the controls of this till it at least gets back in some semblance of order. At least that's my gut feeling on it. And if Diamond gets it back in some kind of control, then maybe there may be some kind of a move to Diamond. Diamond might sell it. Marvel and DC, Marvel, I think, is committed to the direct market more than DC at this point. Just because everything, again, the rumors you read and the things that are happening, I think DC wants to make a play into digital and will eventually do that. And it's really tough to say. I mean, they're all big publishers and corporations, and they're definitely not worried about me. So they're going to do whatever they need to do to survive and keep their business driving. And we'll have to we'll just have to go along for the ride if we can. I think that a lot of shops are going to be facing that fact in the next year. So that's kind of where I am.
Well, for so long,
Ron, would you like to?
Diamond's been the only game in town. I mean, that's how it evolved. That Diamond was a monopoly basically. So that is obviously, as we've now seen, that's a sword that cuts both ways.
Right.
And when Diamond said we're not going to be putting new product into stores, there's no other way to get it right now. So if you have all of your eggs in that basket, and we as an industry for the direct market have all of our eggs in that basket, and something happens to that basket, you got a problem. And smarter people than me haven't figured this out. So I can't even begin to predict where it's going. But certainly publishers have other means to get books into stores, but they might not be comic book stores. The market has obviously diversified in terms of what kind of product and what kind of readers we're getting. DC's YA graphic novels are really not designed for comic book stores to a great extent. They're designed for big box stores where teenagers are shopping. They're all pieces of the pie, and we need all of those pieces of the pie to work for a healthy industry. So the monthly pamphlets are kind of the backbone of the business as a whole, but it's not the whole business. But I think we got to first and foremost save that backbone. How do we get books into stores that might not be open, and how do those stores get the books into the hands of the readers? I mean, this whole situation really brings into focus how this ecosystem works. If the publishers can't get the books to the printers and through Diamond, and Diamond can't get the books to the stores, and the stores can't get the books to the readers, the whole thing comes to a grinding halt, as it has. And now publishers are putting books on hold. They can't send the books to the printers. The printers aren't working. It's Lion King Circle of Life stuff, and every link in that chain has to function properly for everybody else to function. So now, so when Diamond can't get paid by stores, that means Diamond can't pay the publishers. So that means the publishers can't pay the staff and the freelancers who are working on the books. It's a real shakedown effect all the way through. And I think different stores are probably approaching it differently. Some are doing mail order. John, you're doing some mail order, yeah. Mm-hmm. But I think the current situation where the mail order is on whatever's on the shelves right now. There's no new product coming out, so that weekly drip of income from stores to Diamond to publishers is not happening right now. Right now, it's just a matter of the stores selling the product that they have right now to keep afloat. That doesn't, which is good. I mean, obviously, if you can be out there and do mail order through your store, if you can put some dollars in that store's cash register right now, by all means do it. If I think if somebody's been eyeing that artist edition for $100 that's on the shelf of that store, and you can afford it right now, now's the time to buy it, because the store needs it more than ever. But that will hopefully float the stores for a little bit. It doesn't solve the problem of Diamond and the publishers and the rest of the chain, but we just got to deal with one link at a time right now and get everything healthy. John said that the digital question becomes pretty important, because that's the publishers obviously have material that's finished that is not in the reader's hands right now. The only way to get it into the reader's hands with any sort of certainty is digital. So at some point, do publishers decide they're gonna pull that trigger and start releasing that material? I don't know.
I think a lot of that will depend on the length of how long this lasts. I think if we're looking at the end of May, the beginning of June, maybe the publishers can hold off until the books can start to flow again in the shops. I think if this thing has to last longer than the beginning of June, then I think some publishers are going to make decisions to try to get stuff out and try to get at least their people back to work. With the stores closed, that's probably the hardest problem. Like I was doing the last week, I was actually closed the last week that books shipped, but I have a pretty faithful subscriber base and basically did curbside at the store and sold through everything that I had to sell through that week at the curbside. And I think a lot of stores are able to do that. and can survive through this. But obviously, with no product coming in, it's irrelevant. You can get orders on stuff that's old, but I think everybody in this group realizes people want what's coming out next week. They don't.
Only goes so. Yeah, the next. I mean, ultimately, people want the next issue of Batman. That's
right.
That's what keeps that weekly traffic into your store and everybody else's.
Right. And so, like when Diamond sent me a survey and they sent me a questionnaire, and I have to say they've been pretty good about trying to keep in contact. It hasn't been. I mean, it's not weekly even, but it's enough to kind of see, okay, at least they're interested. And the last contact I had was from my sales rep, who basically said, give me the parameters of what your store is doing. Are you closed? And give me an idea of what you think the fix is for this. And for me, I said, you know what? I don't need the store open to keep selling new product. So send me the new product. Because I'll keep doing curbside. And, but probably 90% of my new book sales are all to reserve customers. So if you're a store that relies on walk-in trade, Midtown Comics or somebody like that, where, your walk-in traffic has to frequent the store, that's not an answer. So I think the smaller guys that have set stores with decent reserves can probably continue to survive getting their new comics. But the bigger stores that rely on that walk-in trade, that's where it's really going to be tough. And I think Diamond has to come back and, like they did with the publishers, and changing terms by saying that we're going to give you 25% this month and whatever we can next month, and change. They have to start to adjust terms to the retailers too, and that'll keep the retailers healthy enough to continue to operate so we can get back to some kind of semblance of regularity. Again, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but to me, those are some of the things that have to start happening earlier than later to keep this going.
Do you have any thoughts,
it's
Jim?
got to be a scramble. It's got to be a scramble to get if you don't have your inventory online, to get it all up online, particularly if you don't have new books coming in, I mean, a lot of smaller stores don't have that, and so it's a scramble to get customers to know what your back stock is. I imagine. I don't know how you're doing that. I mean, to put up a web page and list everything that you have it's got to be a lot of work. Yeah.
Is that to me? I mean, for me.
It's in general. I mean,
for me, it's basically social media driven.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to do as much as I can on Facebook and contacting, customers directly when books come in. But again, I do primarily back issues. Mm-hmm. I'm not really doing much with new stuff online. And the back issue business, the core back issue business, the key back issue business is actually doing well right now, because I think there's a lot of people that still have money coming in, and they're basically feeding off of the people that need to sell off books to kind of keep food on the table.
Yeah. So
there actually is some sales out there, but I'm not really sure how long that can last either, because if this goes for 2-3 more months, those collections will dry up, and that'll slow down too. So, again, at the end of the day, I think we have to try to figure out ways to try to put this back in motion sooner than later. And again, I understand the social distancing. I understand that, you're putting people at risk by doing that, but I think it's an equal balance. One has to go along with the other. We have to kind of watch what we're doing as we're doing it, but it has to come back.
Well, I think there's also, the answer for you in Boston Spa, New York, is probably a different answer than it is for Midtown Comics in Times Square.
For sure.
And it's sort of sorting through all of that, sorting through those differences is, I think, one of the difficulties, because places that are more crowded. I mean, obviously, we're dealing here in upstate. We're dealing with a much different situation than they're dealing with in Manhattan and Brooklyn. And the density of population down there, and the mass transit needs and all that stuff just makes the situation that much more difficult to deal with there than it is here. Not to say that things are better roses here, but because of the the space we have around us, much more so than in a real urban environment. Even obviously I'm west of Albany, so huge difference between where I am and downtown Albany. Obviously, people are having to behave differently there than I do here. So I think the finding fixes is not, there's no one size fits all answer for any of this stuff.
Well, one of the concerns I have is what's going to happen to smaller publishers when Diamond does get up and running, because historically it's always been a crash and burn for small publishers, and so what I would actually like to see is another distributor come into the market, because historically Diamond's not always been kind to small publishers, and picks and choose because they are a monopoly who they want to carry. I hope on the bright side that we actually could get another publisher or distributor in to pick up stuff. But I'm curious to see, if Diamond has to cut back on what they do, it's going to be probably the small publishers that are going to be cut back at that level. So, no one knows for sure, but that's my biggest worry in coming year, what's going to happen.
Well, I think certainly that, how this all shakes out is going to be, there are some places, stores, publishers that are not going to come back from this. It's just, I think that's a very harsh reality that we have to deal with. And it depends on the store, it depends on the publisher. Comics is a pretty subsistence level business for everybody. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of cushion for everybody involved in this. So the ones who were best positioned to weather this storm are probably going to be okay on the other side. But people who didn't have very full coffers or were needed that monthly drip from Diamond just to make ends meet are looking at a hole. Although I will say that I've had a number of publishers that I'm working with, contact and say everything's business as usual. We're fine. You're going to get paid when you turn in pages. And I even had a publisher or two that actually were a bit in arrears in terms of paying invoices. Suddenly the invoices got paid, and everything was this was a chance for them to catch their breath and pay their bills and get everybody upright and keep producing material. I think it's a scary time, but I think this business is full of good people who love comics. Publishers, retailers, readers, everybody in the chain is in this business because they love comics. Because if you didn't love comics, there's not enough profit in this business to be doing it. Right? Like nobody's here for nobody's here for the vast wealth in the supermarket. Everybody's doing this because this is the thing that they have to do. This is the thing that they love. So, I think industries that are full of those kind of people tend to weather these things a lot better than places where it's just a job.
My hope.
Well, I don't want to keep you guys.
Sorry. Oh. Go ahead, Chad.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
My hope for the small publishers is that somebody like Diamond will consider that, but I think it's also going to be a time thing. I think the terms of payment will be stretched out even further for smaller publishers, which makes it that much tougher for them to stay afloat. It's not fair, and I can't say that that's exactly what's going to happen, but my guess would be that they'll be servicing the big two or three as quickly as possible, and then take on others based on financial amounts of money and based on time of paying those publishers.
Well, I don't want to keep you guys too long, so I'm going to, kind of do a final go around. And I know both Ron and Jim have Kickstarters, so I'll let Ron start first. If you want to just do your final thoughts, talk about your Kickstarter and.
My final thoughts is everybody, wash your damn hands and stay inside. That's ultimately the only thing that really matters. Is let's get through this as intact as possible, because I think that the more we do that and the longer we do that, it and I know it seems like a long time. I don't know. I mean, a big trip for me these days is going down to the bank that's 5 minutes away and going to the drive-through window. That is a pretty damn fine day when I can actually leave go beyond the end of my driveway. But I think the longer we do this, we stick it out for another 3-4 weeks or however long this is going to take. The chances of this coming back and forcing us all to do this all over again are that much less. Like we were saying before, with being in New York State, it feels like there's somebody in charge who actually knows what's going on and has a pretty good idea of how to deal with it. I am really happy I'm not in Texas right now. I'm not in Mississippi, where it seems like there's just do whatever you want, whatever. So
West Virginia.
Yeah, really. It's stay the course, I guess. And we'll be out the other side. And when we are out the other side, we'll have all sorts of cool Kickstarter books to deliver to people, including Dreadstar Returns. Man, I should be a writer, right? That's a segue, boys. So we're doing the Kickstarter for Dreadstar Returns, which launched today. It's a 100-page hardcover graphic novel written and drawn by Jim Starlin, another local upstate New York guy who is, as we speak, stuck in his house just like all the rest of us. And it's Jim's return to drawing. I don't know if not everybody might know this, but Jim actually injured his drawing hand probably about 4 years ago now, and was really not able to draw. Had kind of resigned himself to the fact that drawing was not going to be the way he would tell stories. He'd just be a writer from now on. And little by little, he started doing some sketches and started doing some covers over the last few years, and rehabbing his drawing hand back into shape. So he has undertaken writing and drawing a 100-page graphic novel. It is the first new Dreadstar story in about 30 years. So the Kickstarter for that just went up today, and I am the editor of it, which means I just get the pages from Jim and tell him they look really good and pass them along to the letterer. That's all I need to do in this situation. And the pages do look really great for a guy who hasn't drawn in 4 years. It's just phenomenal work. And Jim is more than halfway through drawing the whole thing. Kickstarter went up today, and I believe it's over $40,000 already. So we've blown past the goal by quite a bit already, which is hugely gratifying. In a situation like this, where obviously this is a very different time to be doing this kind of thing. You don't know what the reaction is going to be. And thankfully the reaction has been really positive and people seem very excited about it. So the current ominous press Kickstarter is Dreadstar Returns. It'll run for another 3 weeks or so. And at this point, we would love to just keep adding up that number, keep adding up the stretch goals and the rewards, so that when Jim's done drawing it in a couple of months, we can get it off to press. We'll find a printing plant that's actually open. We'll do that part, and we'll be able to get a really nice hardcover in everybody's hands, along with a Dreadstar Who's Who style guidebook that is the companion volume. That's the first time any of that stuff's been compiled into that sort of material. So 2 really nice books, and the 3-volume Dreadstar Omnibus, which reprints all of Jim's previous Dreadstar stuff in a remastered package. So there's cosmic goodness waiting for you.
Are you writing anything that you can talk about, or?
Let's see that I can talk about. Well, this is the 80th anniversary Green Lantern story that I'm doing with Daryl Banks. That'll be out in DC's 80th anniversary Green Lantern special, scheduled for May. I assume that's still when it'll come out, hopefully. So there's that. There's a bunch of other stuff that I can't talk about yet. Things that are in
okay.
Things that, let me see, what can I, let's see, what can I, there's, I mean, here's the thing I'm doing with Rick Leonardi, working on another Death Wish Coffee Presents issue with Rick Leonardi.
Nice.
Another short story that's actually a one-shot story for now that's set in the Hudson Valley, but that's all I can tell you about it. So there's good stuff I can't leave the house, so I got to do something.
Nice. Well, when you can talk about that other stuff, hopefully, we can talk about that.
Yeah, I think little by little the stuff will get announced. Although, like now that to be serious for a minute, now the announcements of all this stuff are sort of stopped because nobody quite knows like when the stuff that's in the pipeline right now is going to be released. So does that mean that everything else that we're doing is set back? And it's all just so, I think that's really the most disconcerting about all of this is you just don't know. I likened it to when we lived in Florida and I worked at CrossGen Comics for a few years. We had some hurricanes roll through and invariably the angst of the buildup to the hurricane, watching the tropical depression and watching where it goes on the map and then wondering if it's going to, come, take an abrupt right turn and come into the Tampa Bay area. Like all of that was the anxiety of not knowing what was going to happen was much worse than the actual storm. Like that was much worse than, okay, we got to hunker down and batten the hatches and tape the windows and do all that stuff. Like once you knew that it was coming for you, you could be proactive. But in that period of just not knowing what was going to happen, it was the worst. And I feel like that's kind of the space that we're in now with our lives, with the comic business, with everything. Right now there are no answers, and it's impossible to make a plan and be proactive about all this. Hopefully, within a few weeks or a month, we'll have a much better sense of our timeline and what we need to do to get back to normal.
Well, if you get too bored, you can write me a couple more issues of Sojourn.
Well, Disney might frown on that, but we don't have to tell them, right?
Yeah, right.
It's for chat only.
Okay, Jim, I know we talked earlier. Yeah, earlier this week. But so how's the Kickstarter going?
It's going.
It's
60%. Where it's moving along. It's a little slow down, or sort of in what you call the dead zone in the middle, where not much happens. So we're putting on some new stuff and keeping it moving along. And I'm spending my time at home just catching up on stories that I've been working on and finishing up some creative stuff and working on that and watching the Kickstarter. So actually being home and having time to dedicate to it has been pretty good.
Hey Jim, do you find like I've found that I just want to this is obviously what I do every day, so this is all good, but I find that I just want to make things, period. Yeah. Like being in this environment and sort of not having the choice of going out to have a beer or see a concert or go have dinner with friends. I find that I have an even greater impetus to make stuff, to the point of like I've written some short stories for artist friends and we didn't even know when or if or how they'll ever be published, but we're just making some stuff.
Yeah.
We're just creating things for the sake of creating them, and that's actually kind of a huge relief to have that option of just saying, let's do a short story. Here's this short story idea I've got. You want to draw it? And, buddy goes, okay, yeah, send me that, and I'll start picking away at it. It's just sort of comics in their purest form, I guess.
Oh yeah, definitely. I've been finding myself going back to stuff I started, little ideas that I had written down that I wanted to get to, little things that I wanted to do, and now I just have the time, and I'm really inspired to do it because, well, obviously I can't go out, and so I'm just spending my time, and all that stuff's moving along and generating and happening. So it's a really productive time for me, and obviously for you too.
Yeah, I mean, it does sort of remind you that if you have something you love to do, it's a pretty great medicine for whatever ails you.
Yeah. Well, it's also nice that list of all those things I have to do, I can't do anyway, so that I can go back to this and focus on that stuff. So it's nice and really have the time to do it,
So, John, how about I know you're still doing your curve stuff. What's in the pike for you, I guess, besides trying to serve your customers.
I'm still listing stuff on the Facebook page and meeting customers a couple of times a week for curbside at the store. That still seems to be working pretty well. The time has given me. I'm kind of moved my agenda forward a little bit because I was kind of planning to really surge into mail order when I retired in a few years, and that's kind of brought that a little bit closer to the current timeline now, and it's allowed me to kind of explore the different ways to do mail order. I mean, I did it years ago. I did a lot of mail order probably 20 years ago when I was moving into the Saratoga area, when, transitioning from, because my original store was in New Jersey, and then I relocated up here. So there was a 2-year period where I did a lot of mail order locally while the shop in New Jersey still existed. And I'm going back and reintroducing myself to some clients that I haven't done business with very much because they were pretty much exclusive mail order clients. And that's been good. So, I mean, I could transition away from the store probably to mail order pretty quickly if I needed to do that full time. I don't want to do that. I want to stay with a storefront till I get to full retirement age. But, it's nice to know that the option is there, and so far it's been okay. I mean, I have to admit the first couple of weeks it was hard because you watch sales dwindle because there wasn't new product, but you learn. One thing I've learned, and I think everybody that's in this business that is in it for any length of time, is you either adapt or you die. You have to, the dinosaurs are the ones that go away. And that's one thing in the 35 years that I've been doing this. You make the changes. You just have to go with the flow, and I think that that's important, and these circumstances are going to change things for everybody for probably ever. So it's important. It's important to make sure you can reevaluate and figure out, how can I make this work? And I'm confident I can. So I think we'll be okay. I mean, I hope it doesn't last too long because I really wonder. I think, it's hard to put a number on it, but I really think that if this lasts through the summer, it could be the death knell for the direct market. I think it's got to get back sooner than later in some semblance of regularity, because I think the longer it takes, the harder it's going to be to put it back. So, but, I think a lot of guys that have been doing this for a long time, and a lot of my neighbors here in the Capital District have had stores for a long time, and I think they're all survivors. So I think we can adapt, and the Capital District is going to have comic book stores after this is all over. I'm sure of that. So,
well, look, comics have been dying for every year that I've been in the business. So, and we're still here.
Right.
Comics are like vampires. We never get the stake through the heart.
Right.
We find a way.
Very true.
One of the things
Well,
that
I-
I found a lot of time to do is reorganize my monster of a collection and read those comics that I've had in piles that I haven't read yet. And so I might be coming up to your store, John, to get some boxes and things to organize because it's finally a good time to organize all that stuff.
Yeah, surprisingly, that's been one of the best sellers in the store. The supplies. Everybody's buying
Yeah.
bags, boards, boxes because
Well,
Yeah, we're
everybody-
all
to get through their old
Everybody's bagging and boarding that. Everybody's bagging and boarding that collection now, right?
That's exactly right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you guys again for taking time out of your busy social schedules. I know you probably had a lot to do this
Yeah.
evening.
The cat's around here somewhere.
Off to Netflix.
My coworker is apparently out of the room. So, but again, I want to thank you guys for taking the time and really appreciate it. And hopefully, I'll be seeing you all at a con soon.
Yeah.
Let's make sure that happens. Everybody stay safe, stay healthy.
Yep. Do the
Yep.
same. Thanks, Chad. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
See you guys.
Yep.
All right. Are we